Hello and welcome to the CCCX show. Hopefully I didn't say too many C's then. The Country ComX show with myself, Dustin, and Lee. Hey everyone.
How's it going?
Hello.
Good morning, guys, in Australia, and good evening, guys, over in the U.S. Guys and gals.
Yes.
Let's make sure I get that right. I want to get my pronouns correct.
I'll go with everyone. Very easy.
There you go.
Doesn't matter
Cool.
what time it is, mate.
Well, today we've got Hayden, who's last time I pronounced wrong last night, so I'm not going to try it again. And SK, he calls himself, Stephen Cox. So he'll be on later tonight, this morning, depending where you are. And so, not to waste any time, I'll bring Hayden straight on.
Bring him on.
Hey, Hayden.
Hey guys, how are we?
Good morning.
Hello,
Good, thanks.
Hayden.
How's yourself?
Yeah, good. Nice to meet a couple of you at least.
For sure.
Yes,
yeah.
a fellow Reverie Publications bannerman.
Yeah. Shane, I heard you mention, I didn't get to tune in last night. Did Rob correct you on my surname by any chance?
Yes, it was Rob.
He only found out during this week, so yeah, that's news to him as well. But yeah,
he corrected me, and I can't remember the correction. So what is it again? It's
Spiral.
Spiral.
So
I said
a lot of people sort of slur the U like a spiral kind of thing, but yeah.
Yep, that's what I did last night.
Yeah. No, it's all
Mate,
good.
you should have heard what they were calling you off camera. Whoa,
no.
Nelly.
Oh, yeah, off camera. We won't talk about that.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm sure I've heard it all before.
So, Hayden, I'm going to straight up, mate. I'm going to go with a very boom question. Favorite comic? Hit me.
Oh shit. Probably Why the Last Man. I'm a huge
Nice
Brian K.
choice.
Vaughan fan. He was sort of one of the more influential writers for me getting into comics, because I was pretty late. I didn't read comics growing up. I got into them at about, I want to say 18, 19. And then I sort of started trying to make them maybe early to mid 20s. So
Did someone give you a copy of Why the Last Man, or you just happened to take a left into a comic store, the cover grabbed you? Like, what was the thing with that, man? What really grabbed it?
I think I kind of remember, but what I did when I was first getting into comics was it was very sort of a cliche process where I got into Batman around the Dark Knight Rises period.
Right.
And I got into The Walking Dead around the time the show started hitting, and I read the comic. And then after that, it was sort of just I actively pursued everything and anything I possibly could. And that eventually led to me becoming obsessed with Vertigo and then Image. So then I found Brian K. Vaughan and sort of never looked back.
That's awesome, because that's a big thing that people take for granted right now. We were talking about it Wednesday night. Films and what they do to the comic industry and what they do for the comic industry, because when you go, hey, look, I got into it because I really like this movie, so I picked up the book. Man, I can't tell you in the US, owning a shop and how many people would come into my store and go, hey, do you have The Walking Dead? Bro, I could have thrown a bag of M&Ms on the floor, and each of them would have hit a person when that first show first started. It was literally like, fladoosh. And all these people are like, Walking Dead, Walking Dead, Walking Dead. And you're like, yeah. I've only got 2 copies left out of the 100 I order every week. You know what I mean? So there's a lot to be said about that. And it's very cool. I don't think I don't think it's a negative thing to start later in life, because you're educated more later than you are in your youth. It's more a fantastical element when you first come into it as a child. And you're 10 to 15 or whatever. What's going on, man? So it's a very interesting thing, because as you're older, you look at it differently. You're like, oh man, this story is really good. That's really interesting. The characters are really deep, versus holy cow, Juicy Spider-Man just beat the shit out of the Vulture. It was great. You know what I mean? You're downstairs eating your cereal going, Dad, he was whooping his ass so bad. You know what I mean? But it's like there's a lot to be said about when you're educated and going into something. And the fact that you started maybe 5 years after reading your first comic book, that's a phenomenal thing, man. That's how much energy you have behind it, and I think that's incredible.
It's so interesting to me when I speak to people, because a lot of people that are creating comics, they did read it as kids. So it's interesting hearing those stories from the outside looking in. Like, you can sort of feed off of that enthusiasm that everybody seems to have for it.
Sure.
Obviously, I do have enthusiasm, but I don't have that whimsical childlike wonder,
right?
Or that memory of it. Yeah.
So when you go and do you collect comic books each week, or is it more of a, passing by, I've read a review on this, or something's caught your eye, I'm going to pick this up? Do you go home, have a moment to yourself where you pull up on the wing chair and you're like, Matt, I want 3 hours just to, take it all in, man? Like, what do you do with yourself? Hey, Dave.
Yeah. I don't get to the comic shop as much as I'd like. I don't live super close to any at the moment. So, I sort of don't find a lot of time to do a lot of reading. But when I do read comics, I'm using Comixology quite a bit.
For sure.
So doing a lot of digital reading, and
I was wondering if you went over to, Lee's house to pick up your Battle for Brussels, is what I was just curious about.
No, I got to read that at a recent convention that was held down in the eastern suburbs here. Gary Della had it on the whole big spread of Reverie titles. So yeah, it was really cool though. And I do need to get the rest of them as well.
Phenomenal stuff, guys.
I really loved the I definitely saw these sort of Metropolis inspirations, and the sort of the whole social, class, working class, themes behind it. I really kind of connected with that. I thought that it was really cool.
Thank you, mate.
I'm a fan for life. I'll go down to, we'll do trivia night for Battle for Bustle.
Mate, don't ask me to answer any of the questions. I'll be sitting here like, what?
It's so hard talking about your own shit.
Oh, it can be. Don't get me started after a six-pack, though, mate. You might just turn the computer off and go, oh, my God, get rid of this.
I'm morbidly curious now.
We need to do that one night. We really do. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, Hayden, mate, your works at the moment now with Reverie, lay out some of your comic book stuff that you've been doing, man.
Yeah, cool. So I guess the first book I made was a 3-parter called Chimera.
Yep.
Made that in, there you go. I made the first issue in, actually, I wrote all 3 of them. I think it was across sort of 2016, 2017 period. So a little while ago now. And I put the first issue out completely self-published, and it was pretty mediocre. And then, but it caught Gary Della's eye at Reverie Publications, and he prompted me to push it through his label. So that's how that all started. And the second and third issue are at the printers now, so they're finally seeing the light of day, which is awesome. Yeah, and it's sort of, they're a huge learning curve. You sort of writing and art and everything it's an evolution. So I look back at these stories and I think, look, I'm a lot better now than I was then, but that's the process, right? So I learned so much working on them, and they were invaluable, but they've also informed what to do and what not to do in the projects that I'm doing today.
Oh, mate, I think you'll get better every issue. I've found myself doing the same. I look back every now and then on issue 1, and I'm, try to improve. So it's I think that's just the natural evolution of things, man. Like, you get better and better, and I think if you hit a point where you don't improve, then you might be in a bit of trouble there. So I think constant improvement is the number one aspect of storytelling, mate. So
totally,
that's what I think. But you guys might disagree. But mate, I'm really interested in what's your writing process? Like, do you just, is it like a David Lynch thing? Do you meditate for 20 minutes twice a day and get an idea and write it down? Do you, have 2 hours of a night where, you might be walking down the street, see someone, that looks a little bit, politely different, and, woo, idea, and you jot that down, and what's the go, mate? How's your brain work with this stuff?
God, it's so messy, man. It's always changing. I do find that I do, I guess, ruminate is a good word, a lot on what I'm working on. So I'll spend a lot of time thinking about what that process is going to look like, what the project is going to turn into, and then I might start a draft, but with the knowledge that draft is probably going to get tossed out. Like, I'll begin writing, I'll write, maybe a whole issue or 3/4 of an issue, and then I'll start reflecting on what that issue is looking like, because I find that and I've tried sort of all sorts of ways of writing. I've tried really, really detailed plot outlines, and I've also tried just winging it, and neither really worked for me. I find that I need to have an idea of what I want to do, what themes I want to touch on, what kind of arcs I want to take the characters on, but I also need to learn about the story as I'm going. Otherwise, I tend to check out a little bit. I tend to have a little bit of trouble with it. So I need to try and find a happy medium, and sometimes that does mean writing some, going away, going for a walk, or just taking a day or however long away from that script, and then coming at it with new, fresh eyes. And I find that the story teaches, the story informs my process as much as I inform the story, if that makes sense. Like, the characters start to dictate where it's going a little bit, and then I reevaluate.
Well, that's interesting,
cool.
right? As we're writing, three of the people in this room I know for a fact are writers.
Someone isn't.
And that's it's an interesting thing when you hear people talk about what their process is, and it's very different. Like, mine is, oh my gosh, I hang out and I have a good time, and I cut on some music that is just loud and as metal as I can get for a couple hours. You know what I mean? Either while my kids are asleep, because this room is soundproof, so I blow it up. You know what I mean? So I can get into that zone, and it does. The characters dictate themselves almost. Like, that's not a joke for any of you guys that are trying to write. Don't be hard on yourself. Hayden is absolutely right. The characters will start moving in their own directions, ways that you hadn't even planned on. So that's a very good point, and I find that to be incredibly interesting. And look at the characters in Battle for Bustle. I feel like they have a life of their own, Lee. I mean, they had to have come in their own, direction.
They, some of them were difficult. Some of them, did evolve into, characters that I guess they were never meant to be, if you know what I mean. The initial idea, and then over time they've changed into something else. I tend to find that when I'm writing, I sort of, I don't know, I say to my missus, look, I need 4 hours to write. And she's like, 4 hours to write? And I'm like, yeah, because it's going to take me like an hour to, get my head around it. And then you put an hour worth of really solid time into it. And then you walk away and, think about it. And then you come back and you go over what you did. And, mate, it might only be a paragraph in 4 hours, but or a page or something. But that's, I found every issue for me has been a different process. So, I can sympathise and understand where both of you are coming, how it just evolves. Some days I can just wake up, mate, and it's just boom, and you're just like, and you got to get it out like a machine, and then I probably won't come back for a week, you know what I mean? Because I've got to do the art as well, and it's constantly evolving with me, mate, much like my beard. So it's an organic process. So I used to get a bit frustrated when I was younger, but given I guess that I've been doing the project for so long myself that I've just sort of given into the creative side of things, mate, and don't push it too much. But when she's time to go, mate, it's pedal to the metal. You know what I mean? It's like days at home alone, and
I throw them all out in the yard. I'll send the kids out in the yard. We'll hang out and talk for a few minutes, But when it's like the bug, right? When the bug bites, man, you're down to it. you know, even like we used to joke. My wife used to get so mad when I first started writing, and she'd be like, we'd be out like at the store, and I'd catch something, you know, while I was just walking down the store. And my memory is awful, right? So I'm texting myself things so I don't forget them. I'm like, man, don't forget to do this. This will be an awesome idea. And then my texts start catching up, and she's like, who's blowing your phone up? And I'm like, me. You know, it's nobody else. It's just me.
Yeah, I think, mate, it's I don't think there's any right or wrong in it, mate.
For sure.
I think as long as you know, at the end of the day, essentially you yourself as the creator have to be, I suppose, happy with the product. You know, I mean, it is a product of your own imagination and yourself. And as long as, you know, I mean, standards within an individual change over time as we get older and stuff, you know. We're not the same well, I'm not the same person 43 as what I was at 40 or 33, you know.
Right, for sure.
And I just think that, you know, I like what you're doing, Hayden. I've actually, I've been keeping an eye on you, mate. Like I'm a little bit of a, look, I don't pop on Facebook all the time, mate, but basically one of my big things is keeping an eye on what everyone's doing around, you know, the place. And just, I guess, mate, you know, it's the community, you know, like you always like to see your fellows, you know, busting away and doing what they're doing and stuff. And I'm, you know, you're talking before, you know, you had issue 1 at Chimera, came out a while back, and you finally got the opportunity to bring 2 and 3 out. Man, mate, that should be something that you should be super proud of yourself doing, because you didn't give up on it, mate. You just kept those legs pumping, and you know she's about to drop. You know, so
yeah, you make a great point about community, and I think that's something really special that Shane is doing, and I'm the same. I'm in the same boat, Lee, is that I'm starting to really, you know, even if I'm not super active on Facebook, I'm following people that I'm finding really inspiring, and really they're doing really cool things. When I made Chimera, it was such a because I don't draw, so it was a really solitary process. But I found an artist through a forum, and it was because I didn't know the Australian community yet, and I didn't quite know how to find it. Gradually, there's a comic meetup every month in Melbourne. I started going to that, and then again, Shane, and I'm meeting people online, and you quickly realize that obviously it's a niche and it's a small world, but it's bigger than you think. Like there are more people trying to do it than you might think when you're trying to get in.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
You know, it's hard. Like being a writer, so I'm an engineer, but I all my stuff, it never comes out the way I want it to. So like when it comes to comic book work, you know what I mean? If you give me blueprints, whatever, we're fine. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to comic books and the things that I want to see, like in my own books, it was very difficult. So finding an artist the first time was incredibly difficult. For the listener, I didn't even, oh my gosh, I reached out to David Acampo, who's actually on my team now. I reached out to him because he's a colorist, and he had an artist that he was working with for Zenoscope. And I was like, hey man, do you guys want to work on my title? And I knew it was a shot in the dark, right? Absolute shot in the dark, because no one knew who I was other than a comic book shop before and an online shop now, whatever, what have you. But I was reaching out, like, if you're going to go big is my view on it. You know, if you're going to get somebody, you know, because not only are you advertising for them and showing off their work, but they're also bringing their fans to see your work now, you know, so you have to look at those little nuances of things. And I remember being so bummed out because David's artist was, I guess he had surgery on his hand. And he was like, man, there's no way I can put out product like I want to put out. I don't know how long it's going to be. So I kept in touch with David, you know what I mean? And he ended up coming on to book 2 for me, and in Greed. He colors Greed. But it was like,
cool.
So I put out an all call on a artist page. I didn't know that was a faux pas. I mean, in the big scheme of things, industry, I didn't know that it was a faux pas. You know what I mean? But whatever, I needed an artist. All my friends are cover artists. I didn't have anybody that I knew that could do sequential work, so I needed to find somebody. and I got 165 applicants for the job.
Wow.
And because everybody wants to work, right? Everybody needs to work.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it was like I went through all of them, and I was like, look, I don't need a contractor, I need a teammate. So if you want the job, I need you guys to send me, I don't want your portfolio, send me something quick of my character. This is my character, this is my thoughts, go ham on it. And out of the 160, only like 40 of them sent me actual stuff because they kept wanting to shove their portfolio in my face. And I was like, well, that's cool that you can do a portfolio, but I need this style. Can you bring this style, to my artwork or to my book?
Makes sense.
And Eric, the first thing he sent us was absolutely bananas, and we used it for a cover. But I can definitely sympathize when you're trying to find someone to, what's the word I'm looking for? To portray your vision. It's, as an artist, that's one thing. It's your own game. You can do what you want to do. But as a writer, you come in and you're like, I really need somebody that can almost like pick my brain to figure out what I'm trying to do. I've been very blessed, and I'm very thankful for the teams that I have. You know what I mean? Because it was wild. But once you start doing it for a little while, like if you move into another IP or whatever, and people start paying attention, it gets to be less you having to search for people and more people coming to you to look for work, and that's what I've found. When I went into Greed, people were talking to me. Like, it wasn't like I was trying to find people like it was for the listener, Same thing with the new IP, it was like, my buddy was like, hey, this dude's great. Look at his work, blah, blah, blah. Now all of a sudden he's working for me. It was such an awesome experience. And I really applaud you, like Lee said, for sticking in there and pulling through it. For that amount, do you have the same artist still for all 3 issues?
Yeah, for all 3 issues, it's the same
That's
guy.
incredible to go
That's
that
awesome.
amount of time, because these guys got to eat too, right? So they got to be paid. They got to work. So for somebody to be able to wait that amount of time, stick with that dude, man. I don't care what anybody says, or chick, or whatever it is. Stick with them because they stuck with you. You know what I mean? They waited for you to be ready to put that book out. That's phenomenal, man. Congratulations on finding someone to work with you like that. That's just awesome.
Yeah.
What's the artist's name, Hayden?
Mark Oliver.
Yep.
Doesn't speak English, so that was a whole other challenge as well. As I said, found him on a forum,
wow.
so he's from Brazil, and so that probably not the ideal first try at comics is to understand that there is going to be some language barriers, but it was again
throw yourself in the deep end.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, it was such a great learning curve.
Yeah. And he's your buddy now. Like, he's still with you. You've been through, the ringer together.
Yeah, we haven't worked together again since, and I don't know what's going to happen at the moment. I'm doing a lot of, as I said, I'm doing a lot of work for Gary Della, and
anything you can reveal, mate? Anything you can tell us?
Well, it's been going around. It's been going around a little bit on Facebook, but we're working on Mr. I Detective Agency.
Yep,
I'll bring that one up.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's myself and Ben Sullivan, who's doing the art. He and I work together on Rick McClune #1. If anyone,
I got a copy of that, Hayden. Good stuff, mate. Double thumbs up to the pair of you.
Yeah, awesome.
That
so we
one as
worked
well.
on that. It's a really interesting story because we didn't collaborate at all on Rick #1. So I wrote a script for Gary, and Gary acted as mediator. He grabbed the script and he passed it along, and I was basically, that was it. And then the book came out, and me and Ben and I met at a convention late 2019, I think. And then we got paired for Mr. I, and we've become really close collaborators. So we spend days and hours upon hours talking about what this book is going to look like, and it's just my favorite thing about making comics is that it stops being the vision of one person and it becomes this true collaboration, and our discussions and his art have dictated where Mr. I has gone. So we've got 3 issues in production, and the story is just very different to what it was when I first conceived it in the best possible way.
Right on.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Just
good.
for anyone who knows that wants to know, the Reverie Productions where you find all these comics. Get the link down the bottom there.
That's awesome. You know, it's funny because like
Hello, Gary.
you send these when you're working with artists, you see these cool things happen, right? Like, how's it going, Gary? So you see these things happen where it's like the other day I was talking to my buddy Joseph, who's working on a book with me right now, and he was like, he sent me something, and I didn't even know I wanted that. Like, Lee, I sent you that picture of the character, the big old muscular dude, the T-Rex looking dude with the suit on, right?
Yeah.
I had no
I saw that
idea.
one too.
Right. I was like, I had no idea he's going to come out looking like the Kingpin, and I loved it. Like, I loved it. I was like, this looks so, like, I didn't even know I wanted that. Right. Like, it comes across, and you're just like, that's so good. Can we continue that, you know, particular look for this character? Because it was so much fun, you know, because when you're coming up with ideas, you know, and it's a thing, right, where you're like, okay, once again, I don't do my own art, so I give people concepts for my characters. You know, I'm like, hey, I'd like him to look like this. This is how tall he is, how much he weighs, what's this, what's that. And then when you start working, it's very different working with newer artists in the industry versus artists that have been in a long time, because the newer guys they go ham. The new guys go ham real quick on what you sent them. Now, guys that have been doing it for 15, 20 years, even the guys that haven't broke out heavy just yet, but they've been doing it for a long time, you'll see that you'll start seeing like character designs come in. You know, do you like this hairstyle? Are the clothes appropriate? You know, if it looks like this from this angle, is it okay? Because you want to make sure, you know, we use it like this and stuff like that. It's a very interesting concept, you know, when you start working with people. I find it incredibly interesting that you hadn't met the guy that you were doing a book with. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, when it first started, I was like that mother hen, right? Like, I was on it. I was like, man, you know, this needs to be this needs to be that. And I was like, man, I can't be doing that. You know what I mean? We don't need to, you know, micromanage. You know what I'm saying? But it's at this point where it's a real collaboration where they're investing their time, right? So if you work on a comic book, like mine are bi-monthly. So it's literally like you're talking all the time. You know what I mean? You talk to these guys more than you talk to your spouse or anybody else. You know, but as it goes to it, though, that's their time and their lives that they're working on this project. The more someone works on a project, the more they become vested in it. And it's not just a paycheck anymore. It's their name. My name's attached to this. This is how I feel about it. You know what I mean? Like, I love my teams, like all my teammates. And you'll see them come in and go, hey, we may not want to do that particular page, you know? And you'll be like, why? What's going on, Darren? So why not?
Darren.
Why don't we want to do that page? And it's interesting because everybody's got different viewpoints. But if you get to work with the correct group of people, they're literally like, hey, man, that's just not a good idea because of this, 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 and this. You know, we did a page in the listener, and it was something I didn't even see. I didn't even notice myself. But there's a page in the listener that we changed just a little bit because we had this beautiful background. It's in Win-Win Sweep, actually. It's a beautiful background with Addie, and he's standing with the winds. And then there's 4 panels, though. I'm not going to tell you what's in the 4 panels, but it's 4 panels that are on the page. So it's 5 total, 1 in the background, 1 in each corner. Okay. If we hadn't moved them, they would have looked like a Nazi cross the way they were set up. And reading the listener is a wartime book. You know what I mean? So we weren't trying to grow, you know, subconscious things in the book, you know. And Eric was like, hey, maybe we move these just a little bit because it looks like this. I had no clue, right? Like, I wasn't even, you know, didn't even see the forest for the trees because you're in it so deeply.
Exactly.
And man, yeah, it's awesome. You know, what people are creating and what people are doing. But I find it amazing. That's really cool that you were able to work and put out such a cool concept with a guy you hadn't even met before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Amazing, Hayden.
I love the eyeball thing. That's super cool.
Yeah. It spins off of, that one spins off of Torn issue 2. So the character was designed by Peter Lawson. So I was given the character and I was told, tell a spin-off. And what was interesting was that I found that the story is about Mr. I, but that I needed to create a supporting cast that revolves around him the same way that his eyeballs revolve around him.
Right,
like
right.
He's sort of this passive element, and the world is dictated by him a little bit. So it was a really interesting challenge to create characters that the reader will identify with, because I found that Mr. I is inherently not someone that people can identify with. He has character flaws that have been really fun to explore, but the supporting characters are kind of foils for those flaws. So really cool, and we're really looking forward to getting it out.
Well, the images that I've seen certainly look excellent, like from Ben Sullivan. And
Ben is just a super talent. I am on a daily basis, I'm in awe that I get to work with him. He's incredible.
Well, he seems like a machine, mate. He certainly, he certainly keeps going. And the best thing about it is there is absolutely no, from what I've seen, there seems to be no drop off of intent and ability in his artwork. I mean, in his black and white stuff. But I mean, obviously, I was talking to Dave Dye the other evening, and he was letting me know that Ben also everything painted, so correct me if I'm wrong, but those images we saw before are, like acrylic, and he's painted everything. See, like, that's a man of my own heart, mate. Like, beautiful. But his work just boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, he's a busy person.
Bring it up again.
The consistency.
Look at that stuff, man.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, for sure. Man, it's me Jones, and I don't know if it does it to you too, Lee, but when we start looking at people's artwork, it's just like, man, I got like 6 covers coming out in like a month. I can't wait to see these covers, but it's really cool because, like when you see someone paint things, like when Kyle Lewis, my business partner, when he does covers for me, they turn out beautiful. But what he does, he paints them first. It's not digital, so it's very interesting. And same thing with Eric. Like, Eric paints digitally, but it's interesting to see people that paint versus people that fill, if that makes any sense. So it's like, when you're going in your black and white, and I'll say, I've told Lee before, Battle for Bustle is my favorite in the line of black and white right now. Absolute my favorite, because of the fact that his lines are so stupid sharp, and he puts so many in there. Like, it's crazy. So, but at the same time, though, you have to, because in black and white, every line stands out. Like, every single line stands out. And there's something to be said about people that can draw a straight line. And that sounds so ignorant to people, but I'm dead serious. The majority of the world cannot draw a straight line. It's just, it's a fact of life. So when you see line artists and they're in there and they're doing these incredible lines, pay homage to those guys, man. That's a feat to look into a black and white book, because all you've got is lines. You don't have colors to make them look better. You don't have the pop that a colored book has. So to see people come in and they're like, man, look how cool this looks. I just did if you did a flannel shirt, holy cow, a flannel shirt in a black and white book. And I'm not using it because you're wearing one, Hayden. I'm just saying.
It was my first thought.
Right.
That's where I went as well.
So there's something to be said about somebody that can do lines like that. You know what I mean? A checkerboard, whatever, and what have you. But your fans will point those things out, whether it's subconscious or they're reaching out to you, either or. They're still going to notice that the line isn't straight, the line isn't correct. And if you look at a black and white book, that's all you got. So, paying attention is the key point to it.
Miller.
And it's exciting to see more and more black and white books. It takes us back to the 80s with Transformers and Ninja Turtles. Those were the ones that I got as a kid. And I'll say this, and people can tie me to the stake and burn me for it. But now in this industry, with what we have now in indie artists, the talent is so much higher than it was at that point in time. Not taking anything away from the greats that have been doing this forever. But what I'm saying is there's more expectation. There's more, this needs to be better. I can take my covers right now and I'll put them up against people that have been doing it forever and go, yeah, look, I'm not trying to start an argument, but that's better. My book is better. And you can look at people and go, like, there are numerous people that are on the calendar right now that I've seen their stuff and been like, that's better. I could put it up against famous books and go, man, the name doesn't carry the weight to blow the artist out of the water. And that's the difference right now, because you literally have to bring your game to another level. I'm looking at Toxic Avenger covers the other night. I posted the first one on Facebook yesterday. It's you got all these guys that are like, man, this is badass and this is awesome. And they are awesome. And they were at the time. You know what I'm saying? But if you were to show kids now and young artists now the original drawings of Ninja Turtles, they would have a very different view on them. You know what I'm saying? It would be a very different conversation. And it's interesting, to see things like that, because the turtles weren't always drawn perfectly. The ratios were not always perfect. But now in society, we demand that. We demand that perfection of artists. And like I said, those black and white guys, they got nothing else to save them. They have to make it just right. And you know what? I have got kudos to you guys that go in the black and white, because it takes serious brass. It'd terrify me.
Well, mate, in regards to Bustle, A Battle for Bustle, I had actually contemplated doing it in colour, but I asked the bloke next to me, who's here now, which happens to be me, and and I said, mate, do you want to colour this? And I said to the guy next to me, who's me, I went, no. So I went with black and white. But no, look, mate, I love black and white. My heart is in black and white. No offense to colorists and that of all, regards, beautiful, love art in general. But I've said it before, I grew up with a staple of my father's comics and, loved that. But when I could branch out on my own, like I was lucky enough to come across a couple of very early issues in a secondhand store in Townsville, if you can believe that, of The Crow by James O'Barr. And, I grabbed it because it was an acrylic painted cover. And even back then, that sort of thing went to me. So I've got a real soft spot for that. Opened it up and... okay. So years later, you forget about it. The movie comes out. There's a trade paperback on the shelf. I remember that. Let's get that trade paperback. Went home, blew my mind. Wow. I want to devour everything black and white. So therefore, I veered off into collecting 2000 AD because it had black and white stories in it at the time. I found Blade of the Immortal. It was a beautiful motion. You saw lines, Dustin, as we were talking about, but the lines, instead of sound effects, they were using lines to portray motion and action. Absolutely. And this was all incorporated. And I guess when you're like 20, 21 and just doodling away on paper, you set your mind to, could I do that? And I'll never reach those heights of those great artists, I don't think. But, I'm always going to give it a bloody good go, mate. So, I always like seeing a lovely black and white drawing. I was lucky enough to pick up a limited edition print of the James O'Barr Crow image many years ago. And that hangs up on my wall, and I often spend time looking at that, thinking, "Wow, how did that man do that?" That's my cat's tail there. Don't mind.
I was wondering what that was.
Yeah. That's she's chilling out with me, and oddly enough, she's black and white too. So
I mean, it works. So Hayden, this project you've got going on now, and so we've gone this conversation. We haven't talked about exactly what's happening right this second. Okay. Is there anything you can tell us about this comic you're working on now, or do you have a main character, or maybe a little bit of what's going on? I'm really interested because I think the concept of Mr. I is very compelling. But you write for a publishing company, so it's very different than myself. You know what I'm saying? My books, you'll ask Lee, we'll be bullshitting, and I'll be like, hey, I got a cool new idea. You got to see this IP that's coming out. You know what I mean? And that's just because I choose what I write. You know what I'm saying? It's a very different type of ball game. Like even when I write for a publisher, like my next IP is going out through a publisher, but it was like my story to that publisher. You know, so it's very interesting, and the fact that you are given things to write about. That says something about your talent. And I'm not that's not negative, it's very positive. It says something about your talent that people would be comfortable enough to give you their characters and be like, hey sir, you know, we're paying you. Can you create a story for our character that we've created?
That's pretty cool.
You know, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's sort of I find it interesting that it's independent comics, but it's almost similar to mainstream comics in that way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like that you're being given a concept. So I have quite a few of those in the works. Like I've got a lot of scripts that are in, I guess it's probably called pre-production when they're not quite there's no artist attached just yet, but they're sort of moving.
Right.
Aside from those, so there's a handful of those stories where I've been given a concept and I've had to, like, you bring yourself to the concept. So I spend a lot of time with those concepts, and I'm thinking, okay, but how do I write something that's still me, that still has identifiable characteristics that I like to explore, like themes that I enjoy, or you know what I mean?
Absolutely, for sure. I'm with you. Well, you gotta have your stamp almost. You know, not physical stamp, but you have to have your stamp on a product.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
you can talk about? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you know, I'm avidly against using a pen name. Like as a person, nothing against people that use them. You know what I'm saying? I just don't want to use them. And it's like I could put out my next IP through my own publishing company, but it's so far different than every other thing that I have that I don't want to muddy water, if that makes any sense. So, you know, we have another company publish it. We use their artists, their, you know, cover artists and all that stuff, but it's still my story, you know? And I think it's a very, it's interesting because people can go, hey, look, that's still him. You know, that's his writing style. You know, it's like Stephen King. Love Stephen King to death. But at the same time, I get tired of, you know, 25 pages of The Color for Grass. You know what I'm saying? For those of you that read King know exactly what I'm talking about. But there's something to be said, though, about being able to write in a different style but still make it your own. You know, and I can't even imagine what it would be like to try to write characters that weren't mine. You know, because you have to set yourself in that place and, you know, gather what you're looking for to get it going.
Yeah.
Well, I've never written anyone else's characters, Hayden. So, mate, I mean, hello, champion.
Yeah.
So,
Hi.
hello. Have you got any questions for Hayden?
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, like I've never had that experience either, mate. So, like, do you get like this is what the first issue has to look like or be or something, or do you get a paragraph and stick to that and you can add bits and pieces? Like,
yeah, sometimes one, sometimes the other. Usually the pictures are pretty or the concept or the pitch is pretty bare bones. So which is great. It allows me, okay, this is like, it's like a log line. It's like an elevator pitch, and then I take that and I create a Bible, or I start to create an outline, and so in some cases it very quickly becomes something of my own. Then there's the other situations where, you know, I'm writing a few scripts for Torn, if you guys have seen it popping up. That's the complete opposite, where this is a whole entire cast of characters. There's 2 issues out. There's so many in the works. So that's the other end of the extreme, where it's like these are already fully fleshed out characters. You have to tell a story that matters to you while still staying true to the characters and the world that has already been created. So Yeah.
That'd be quite
That's
the
probably the
skill.
hardest thing. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think you're doing awesome work, mate. You should go and give yourself a pat on the back for everything you've done and all the, everything you're doing.
Thanks,
And
man.
it doesn't look like there's any stopping you at the moment, mate. You're turning into a snowball. You're rolling down that hill, getting bigger and bigger, bud. So good stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah, well done.
So Hayden, is there anything you want to say before we let you go? Anything you want to talk about or pitch or not pitch, promote?
Well,
Then we haven't already gone over.
Yeah. I guess the three things that I'm working on at the moment that I can probably start to hint at is that I'm working on an Australian post-apocalyptic story for Reverie as well, which is kind of
nice.
the elevator pitch was Blade Runner meets Mad Max, which was just set my brain on fire. Secondly, I'm working with Rob Lyle and a bunch of other creators on an anthology called Vamoose, and that's we put out.
Cool. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we put out the first issue, Rob put out the first issue about a month ago. And
too many chooks, eh? Too many chooks.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love that. I love that so much. We just talked about that. We talked about the fact that for American listeners, a chook is a chicken, right? So for those of you that don't know what that is, it's a chicken, and it's the funniest concept in the world to me. So if you guys haven't seen that Too Many Chooks, you need to check it out. Mad funny. Yeah. I mean, Rob also put out the book with the demonic toilet. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of this man's work. So anybody who's right about a monstrous toilet and mean ass chickens, I'm about that life. It's so much fun. These comics are real serious. All mine are real serious for the most part. So when you even Greed has very, very serious undertones to it. But it's interesting to the uplifting comic books that are very different, and originality is so important. I don't know anybody that's wrote about terrifying chickens. Awesome. And the last time I heard about an evil toilet was that movie. What was it? Look Who's Talking. When he walked Look Who's Talking 2, when he walked around the corner and the toilet's all like, feed me, and he's like, amazing stuff.
Well, I'm the same, Dustin.
Blowing it up right now, guys. Australia is definitely blowing it up with comic books. Very exciting stuff. From Mike Crome to Darren Close and Killaroo to like I said, Mike's blowing up over there in Zenescope. He's been doing it for a long time. I mean, Australia's on the map, boys, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Cool. You were saying, Hayden?
Just on the same, Dustin. Vamoose was. Most of my books are I guess, quite serious or dramatic or whatever you want to call it. So Vamoose is this playful comedic sort of thing, and that's been one of the biggest challenges I've ever had as a writer, because I don't usually write like that.
Right.
But yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm working with a couple of artists on stories ongoing for that book. So again, it's that whole thing of I like to write to an artist's strengths as well. So I like to know who I'm working with, and I like to communicate with them and get ideas of what they want to do with the story, and let that dictate where I'm going.
For sure.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we won't leave SK waiting any longer. So, Hayden, thank you so much for this morning / this afternoon / this evening. It was great having you on. Thanks for the insight. It was awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Awesome.
I'll have to get you on to the Wednesday show as well, Hayden.
Yeah, totally. Would love to join in some more.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much.
Have a good one, guys.
Catch you, Hayden.
Have a lovely day, mate. Good on you. Thank you.
What a nice guy.
That was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Hayden's cool. I like Hayden. Got a lot of time for Hayden. So I'll just, since we're running a bit late, I'll bring SK straight in. Hey, Stephen.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Hello,
Hey,
SK. How are you, mate? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
This guy, no bullshit. This guy, super talented dude.
Oh, thank you. I've just shared a screen because there's a lot of stuff I want to talk to you guys about. So
Yeah,
if you
sorry,
can
I'll bring that up.
pop the share
Lay
up.
it on me.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about. So the first thing is because when I was having a chat with Shane, he mentioned, look, let's talk something a bit more creative and something, if you're a creator, that I can give a bit of input on. And this is a topic I was just actually discussing with Dustin a couple of days ago. It's in comic book terms, it's called the page turn, because not all comic pages are made equal. Not all panels are made equal. And I don't know if you heard this concept before, but it depending on how you lay your book out. If you lay your book out so that it falls on every odd page or even page, it depends. But the whole concept behind a page turn is on every odd page, you want them to flip that page. So every even page, if you think about how a book's laid out, so the odd page is number one, it's the first page you see, you flip the page, you have a page 2 and a page 3. Page 2 is not as important as page 3. And the final panel of page 3 is one of the most important panels, because it's your temptation. You've got to tempt the reader to go, wow, that's enough of me, enough that you've shown that wants me to flip that next page. So when you're
That's
writing,
really interesting.
yeah, so when you're writing a comic, not all pages are made equal, and you've got to have almost that mini cliffhanger on every page. So what I'm showing you now, and I'm going to shield this a little bit later, so Shane knows this, right? I'm going to shield this a bit later. But this is a page from Terra Olympus Volume 3. It's hopefully coming in July.
This is your Kickstarter, mate, yeah? This is one of
Yeah,
your
sorry.
creations?
Just reminded me.
That's correct. It's coming in July. My usual pitch is it's in the pre-launch now, and if Shane can share the links in the YouTube and the Facebook, much appreciated. But if you haven't already, please click the link. Okay, so this as a page 1. You know, you can see, Stefan, how can I help? Commander Storm, we have a problem. It's Mia. That's a mini cliffhanger. So at this point, you're going, oh, what's happening? What's the problem? Do I flip this page? So I'm hoping that there's enough, just a little bit of mystery for you to go, okay, I want to find out what's wrong, what the problem is. I'm going to flip the page. So that's an example of a page turn. This is an example of an even page, for example. So there isn't a cliffhanger here. So this one should be on the even side because it's leading to the story. So you can read here, you know, this character is basically handing this character a blaster and basically explaining how the blaster works and, you know, how to aim and stuff like that. This is a page that you want to put on the even side because you've opened the page up already. But this page links up to this page. You know, she's explaining how the combat suit works, can display a blaster too. And then it goes, what happens after the second blast? Don't get hit. After that, it'll blow a new hole in your body. That's the page turn, because now they're walking into combat and there are real stakes, you know, being put forward. So at this point, so that panel down there, it's going to blow. It introduces stakes, and it introduces that these characters are now going to walk into a battle. So
SK, can I ask a question? Was this something, because you've got quite a few books and campaigns, etc., and, you know, you do lettering and, you know, you're quite active, mate, from what I can see. You know, obviously an energetic fella. I mean, you're on fire, brother, go.
Thanks, man.
But my question to you is did you just learn this through your own production means, or was this something that you read through, you know, theory books out there in the world? Like what you know, brought you to this detail?
Funny story about that, actually. And I'm gonna bring Dustin in for this a little bit, because Dustin, actually, I'm lettering one of the books of Dustin, which is Greed. And when I was talking
you also
Dustin,
did the listener issue too, didn't you?
I did as well. So when I was actually lettering the book for Greed, I actually brought this up with Dustin because I thought Dustin already knew this. Because in Greed, he's actually done the page turn almost perfectly. The first page of Greed, the new character gets introduced and he bumps his leg, and so you want to flip the page, and the next page is a double page spread where you see that new character hiding. So I was actually really shocked that Dustin wasn't aware of this, because in Greed, basically, he laid the book out almost perfectly on the page turn. And I think what you find is subconsciously I was doing a lot of this, but it was about 3-4 years back when I was actually trying to. One thing I always do is I always try to read up on how to improve stories. Like a lot of the books I read, there's A story, B stories, themes, thematic, hero's journey. I love researching storycraft, but this page turn, that's the reason I brought it up, rather than general story crafting, which has, can apply to novels, screenplays, all the rest of it. The page turn is almost exclusive to comic books because it's not in novels. In novels, you don't have the page turn. You have what you call the chapter cliffhanger. If you Dan Brown is if you ever read Da Vinci Code and stuff like that, Dan Brown is the absolute beast in terms of the chapter cliffhanger. You read the chapter, he drops something, and you go, "Oh God damn it! One more chapter." That's all I want to read. Just one more chapter. Think of it in terms of Netflix, especially the episodic series. Oh God damn it! Why did they end it there? I have to find out what happens next episode. And that's how TV shows work. That's how novels work. But in comics, page turns. That's how it works.
Man, so once you see that, though, once you've let that cat out of the bag, it's something that you can't put back in the bag. You know what I'm saying? You look for it after that. I caught myself doing it the other night. Like, I'm writing 2 issues right now, and I was like, "Is that going to work? Does this meet that quota?" And subconsciously we do it, but at the same time, it's like, can we make it better than we were going to if we hadn't thought about that previously?
Of course, and it's anything that to do with your writing, where you keep thinking and you keep going, okay, what can I do to make it better? Because look, to be fair with you, I've read. Look, you can check my Kickstarters. I've backed close to 200 different projects. I've read every creator that's almost out there, and I love it, and I do support them. But one thing you find is it's not the hook. A lot of people have a very, very good hook. Like it's Mad Max meets whatever, or the characters are really interesting. What elevates from an interesting premise and interesting characters to the next step is all the story crafting. For example, do you have a good B story which thematically ties into your A? And all that bits and pieces that you just have to link it to basically elevate your story up. And the page turn is something in terms of comics, which is almost exclusive comics, that if you get it right, you elevate your story so much, because the guy who's looking at the physical book, he'll just keep flipping. And if you can convince one person to basically read your comic without putting it down, and they read through the entire thing in just one sitting, you've done your job on page turning. Absolutely. Because if you haven't, and they stop halfway to have a cup of coffee or whatever because you didn't keep them hooked, the book goes down, and I'm sorry, that's a big X for as a writer and a creator. But it's a concept that if you can get the page turn right, oh man, your story elevates, and it's a very subconscious thing. So, for example, like going back to this one, this isn't a page turn page because it doesn't end with that whole excitement. This one is. An example is this is a good page turn page. And if you ever have a chat with me, I love my MMA and I love my fight scenes to be very, very realistic. So you can kind of see here. And when I talk to the artists about this, we just watch MMA videos. It's the coolest thing. But hey, watch this fight because they do this in fight. I want this. So you can. I'm sorry, I have to do this. You can see the cracked on the right. She does a left knee, but she sweeps with her other foot because you alternate your foot. So you sweep with the right foot. She's on the ground, and you can see straight away she's jumped on to the standard MMA ground and pound, because once you get someone in that position, that's what you want to do. Hold their head and just keep hitting until they get knocked out. But you can kind of see here, this is an interesting page turn as well, because she's saying there's no point resisting. And you can see the crack on the ground isn't fully on the ground yet. This is all the subtle things that I'm hoping when people read, they pick up. She's still on that little bit of elevated level. So she's not on, if you look at MMA fights, on the full ground and pound yet. So if you're rooting for the lady on the left, you're going, can she flip out of it? Is there a point to resist? What's going to happen next? Does she get out of it? Does she get her face bashed in? what happens here? That's the page turn. So my theory 1011 today, page turning. So
That's
hope
awesome.
you guys enjoyed. So as a
Solid.
writer, please, the thing is, you don't need to put it for every single odd page. Don't get me wrong. Please don't put it for every single odd page. But put it enough in there, say every second, third odd page you put in, because you just want them to convince to go, oh gosh, I'll do the flip. I'll do the flip. Oh, I'm tired, but yeah, one more flip. Oh, god damn it, need to find out. One more flip. If you can do that, you can kind of string the reader along until they go, gosh, it's 2 a.m. in the morning and I finished this. If you ever read Robert Kirkman's Walking Dead, The Walking Dead, you will pick up his page turns. It is he is
He's a monster.
one of the absolute master of that, because he always puts that next reveal on the next page, and it's really fascinating. So I'll give my shill, and then I'll talk about lettering, because I want to cover a lot of stuff with you guys. So my shill is please, the links are there. If you like the artwork, and it's black and white artwork, so I know you guys were just talking about black and white artwork, so I really hope. Shout out to Darren. Darren actually did the gray scaling for this one and this one. So thanks, Darren. That's all on him. So shout out to Darren if he's still on the chats. But Darren did this. And one thing I find, and just last thing on black and white before I move to lettering, is to get really good grayscale or black and white comics, your line work needs to be immaculate. And like you guys mentioned, black and white is a lot less forgiving than color. You can hide a lot of things in color. In black and white, like in this page, there is nothing to hide. Seriously, the backgrounds are white because it's a talking scene. There's nothing to hide. You can hide in here. Where in color, you can start going, okay, if I make that red, it can make the situation look a lot more, red's more warning, danger. You can elevate these by background colors. You don't get that option. You just got to do it in the look in people's faces, the fear. So that's why I'm saying, like, I agree with you guys. Good black and white is very, very difficult.
Absolutely. It takes a lot. Like you said, man, big cojones. Good on you, man. Good on you.
Okay, so lettering. So let me go to the points which this page first. And pet peeve, absolute pet peeve. And I don't know why Marvel is doing this again. Absolutely don't know why Marvel is doing this again. So one thing that Marvel
Do you want me to
is
put your
doing,
full screen there?
it's okay. No, it's just because it's a page. I don't know if you guys can see it. Let's go 91. Okay, that's much better. Marvel is doing this as a letterer. It breaks my heart. Absolutely breaks my heart. They're going back to the upper lowercase lettering, and I don't know why. It looks horrible. Not just looking horrible, and I'll explain a little bit of lettering theory as well. With lettering, you are meant to be invisible. You want it so that when you're lettering, that people don't notice the lettering. If they don't notice the lettering, you've done a good job. Having it up and down, what happens with people reading it? You automatically, when you read things which are the same font size, like all uppercase, your eye tends to just go straight through. Now, if you're reading stuff which is upper lowercase, your eye subconsciously always moves up for the uppercase and then down again. That small break of concentration takes you out of the book. Anything that you do that takes the reader out of the book is a bad thing. And looking at this, I'm just looking. I hate it personally. I absolutely do, because it distracts you. It's them all the letters being all different sizes, and the G, with lowercase as well, you got the G's and how G's and P's and stuff, they drop down. It creates that different height and width. It makes it look very messy. So,
Makes sense.
Real personal preference, go this normal lettering font, all uppercase. Other thing which for me, I find it's just distracting. You have uppercase in the middle, and then you have your P's, G's, and anything that drops down. It doesn't look nice. And then you got your L's as well, which is lowercase, but takes the spot of an uppercase. And it's simple things like that, which I don't know if people really notice, but it does distract the eye. And the whole point about lettering is you don't distract the eye. And this is more now talking as a letterer who letters other people's comics. And I always say this, and if you notice, Dustin, I've lettered some of your stuff as well. The one thing I always say is, you need a proofer. Please don't blame the letterer for spelling mistakes and mispunctuations. What I do, on the whole, is I cut and paste. So I get your text, dump into Notepad, rearrange it, get the right shape, and then put it in.
Absolutely.
If I see a spelling mistake or a punctuation error, of course I'll tidy that up for you. I'm not cruel, I'm not going to just put errors in if I notice it. But one thing I always do is I always keep sending preview pages as I go through, and I send a lot what we call reader copies. So these are 5 pages done, 10 pages done. So proper reader copies so that as it's moving through, you can read it. The other thing that I always send reader copies is it's always important because how you see it on your script may not always translate correctly to the page. It just sometimes the flow isn't there, and sometimes you're reading and you go, oh gosh, it sounded really nice, but when you put it on the page and it flips through, it feels really disjointed. So rule number 1, if you ever get a letterer, please always get a proofer as well, or an editor or beta readers, because the letterer's job is not to fix up your grammar error or not to fix up your story flow. Most letterers will fix, will do revisions for you, no problems, and they're absolutely always happy to. It's just, please be careful of that when you use
You also don't want to waste their time. You know what I'm saying? Like me, I am. When we brought ES on to do the listener, it was like, I love Kyle. Kyle's one of my best friends in the world. When he had never lettered a book, so he did the first listener. And then when ES came on and did the second listener, even he was through the roof. Like, he was so excited about it because it makes such a difference in your book. You want to make sure that you get a letterer that complements your style, because not every letterer is the same, just like not every artist is the same. Like with my books, I let ES put bubbles where he wants to put them because that's his skill set. He knows where it should flow because he'll tell you, you can mess up an entire page just by bubble placement. Like, destroy a page with bubble placement.
And speaking of bubble placement, you guys are segueing me perfectly because I'm just about to talk about bubble placement. So what a good letterer should do is they should read your script and understand what's happening. So look at this page. So again, I'm going to do a bit of reading. So Percy, you can back off now. The strain doesn't mean anything by it. Why? You can kind of see, I can put it to the right of him, but what he's doing here is he's saying to this angry guy, hey, look, back off a bit, step off. And if I put it to the right, it doesn't make sense. There's a lot more space to the right here, but what he's trying to do is trying to put like almost a barrier. He's actually saying the guy pushing him back. So the letter bubble makes a lot more sense in between them rather than to the side. So, and it draws your eyes to this tension between the two characters here. This guy is angry and mad, and this guy's trying to play mediator. It draws the tension to these two guys. Now the next panel, he's whispering. So he's kind of saying, yeah, but, we know you guys get a bit land crate. So you can now notice he's pushing that bubble down because he's kind of trying to keep it on the down low. He's trying to just, calm things down. If a bubble is higher, it's kind of almost inciting things, but he's trying to keep it just a little bit on the down low here. And this one is just, him talking. But if you notice here, when he brushes this guy off, again, the bubble can go to the left, but it makes sense where the action is. So you can kind of see, out of my way, it draws the action to this panel, this section of the page where he's just basically brushing this guy off. And then this guy's, what's your problem? Drops it down here. And then in here, unfortunately, as much as I would love to put the bubbles in between them, because I think that's a good tension page to put in between them, sometimes as a letterer, you get space constraints. So this one had to go left and right. Hypothetically, if this artist had drawn this a tighter crop, like a nice zoom in, and left me space in between here, it makes more sense to put in between here. But it's a space. Sometimes you get constrained by space. So that's why it's left and right. But if you can kind of see here, say for this one, the first panel, and this and the second and fourth panel, you can kind of see that, honestly, I do read your scripts. I do try to get engaged into your story. And I try to put the letter placement where it actually works with your story. As opposed to go, oh gosh, what's an empty spot? Let's just chuck it here, chuck it here, chuck it here. A good letterer shouldn't do that. A good letterer basically leads the reader through the page to where the action sequences are, or where it's more interesting, the good letterer actually puts the bubble in a way that it actually enhances what's happening on the page. I don't know if you guys have ever picked up lettering theory before, but this is lettering theory.
No, that's awesome.
It definitely is.
SK, this is, I love this stuff, mate. I'm just remaining silent to let you speak your, stuff, mate. Like, keep going.
There are things that he's done and shown me that are phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? As we, and to the point where I would never even dream of using anyone else with his skill set. You know what I mean? Because when you pick up a book, like going through Greed right now, because the listener's coming up, and we'll work on the listener when it comes up when we're ready to. But there's something to be said about when a letterer can pull you into a moment. Like not only is it like words, I mean sound effects. You know what I mean? Like there's a point in the Greed where we have a flashlight, and the lettering on it looks just phenomenal because it's not just this huge bold click, sound. It's almost this like it's dark, and the click looks like it should go with the story itself. And I think that's very powerful because you're not only bringing in people that can add direction, but they create atmosphere for you while you're doing things. Like there's a couple phrases in the end of Greed that are in green, and it's interesting. And he brought the green to it. You know what I mean? He I mentioned, hey, I'd like it to be like this, but at the same time, it's like a blank canvas, right? When you tell an artist they have a blank canvas, it's their world to play with. You trust that individual to work in this world. And the same thing goes for a letterer because it can come out looking like, well, I almost said something else I won't say, but a bag of stuff. You know what I mean? And you don't want it to look like a bag of stuff. You want it to look like a bag that ES just got his hands on because it turns out awesome.
Thanks, guys. Okay. If you guys are still excited,
absolutely.
A lot more lettering craft to run through with you guys. Okay. This is a bit of my portfolio page, so I'm not going to do the pitch, but you know what? One thing I tend to do as well is, sometimes we can add a bit of custom bits and pieces. Like this lightning bit I added as a custom bit. Honestly, I can do a bit of special effects, but in most cases, actually, I find if you want like lightning and bits and pieces, usually the colorist is the best person to do it. But at a pinch, hit up your letterer. Custom bubbles for most letterers, it's standard. Again, when they talk through it. The one thing, and I know a lot of people here run campaigns, is the importance of actually having your characters, and again, just talk to your letterer, whoever you're working with, have them write little promos with words in it. Because with these little promos with the words in it, they have the highest engagement. I yet to explain why, but you put something in with a speech bubble in there, it's just people like it a lot more. And they tend to go, interesting. Again, this is with Talos with one of the projects I work for. Again, you have lettering where the word jumps out. And most important with lettering, you try to get to fit the bubbles. You can kind of see here, it's a little bit of a triangle shape for, say, in panel 3, mainly because, again, you want it to be as invisible as possible. You don't want it to draw your attention out of the page. And that's actually not a circle. So the one big issue And I'm sorry, it's going to break a lot of. Have you heard the thing? It's going to break the glass. That concept that once you see it, you will never unsee it. So if you guys never want to see this, close your ears and eyes for 5 seconds, because once I tell you this, you will never unsee it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Too late. Okay. The main thing would be is speech bubbles should never be oval or never really circular. Anybody who does a pure circle or pure oval bubble, unfortunately, the words don't fit quite right. It's actually a little bit more rectangular. So if you go, again, I'm sorry to burst everybody's bubble. If you look at some of the creators who have used really oval speech bubbles, they haven't done it quite right. It needs to be that little bit rectangular shape. And again, it's something that's really subtle, but it just makes the words fit a lot better if it's slightly more rectangular rather than oval. If people just do the standard oval, I'm sorry, you don't get the space around the letters quite right. And again, anything you do that makes the reader's eyes go, oh gosh, I want to take that one step away from the page, you haven't done your job right. You guys have to try to keep the reader's eyes on the page as long as possible and get him to flip that page. Okay.
SK, can I just ask a question there, mate?
Yeah.
Is that also along the lines of, say the letterer does your big circle like you were talking about, and obviously the words won't fit into that correctly. For me, I would think that this is just me, I would think looking at a big circle half full of words would not look correct anyway, because to me, it's total waste of the image that the artist has portrayed. Is that sort of what you're getting at? Like lower it rectangular, make it rectangle so you can just slimline it and fit it in there nicely and subtly?
That's it. You want it such that they don't notice it. Anytime you have too much white space or too little white space, anything you do that is inconsistent draws the reader out of the page. And you want the eyes on the page as long as possible. And don't get me wrong, the writing could be crisp. It could be the most exciting bit of writing. It could be, I was born in the shadows, I didn't see the light of day until I was a man. It could be that level of excellent writing, if it ever gets the reference. But if you put it at a horrible word balloon, you're going to go, oh gosh, I don't want to even read that. But it could be the best writing and it gets missed. Other stuff that probably people don't notice is you can use different speech balloons like this one, and with colors as well. Like this is a dragon. So if you notice he's talking telepathically, it's the color of fire. But it's not pure red so that it contrasts with the dragon. But you can kind of tell from here, it's already the dragon who is telepathically sending his message out without me needing to link it up at all, just from the color placement. Because, dragons breathe fire, close enough. It's all that subtle cues that, as a reader, you don't pick up on unless it's done badly or done incorrectly. Then you just go, oh, what does that mean? But if you do it correctly, you're invisible and they just keep reading. Other stuff that you also need to be prepared for is placement. For example, having the Lord arrest at the back behind the guy means the chanting is happening in the background. So that's all that subtle things that you need to do. And you can see the hiss. There's hisses in the background and hisses in the foreground. The reason for that is the hissing as that all these creatures run forward are all over the place. So it's chaotic, it's random. So you can kind of see here, the placement is everywhere. But if you notice the chanting, it's very structured in where it's placed, because you want that when it's structured in place, as you're reading it, the chanting, and it gets louder, now as in terms of it gets bigger, it's a background ominous sound that keeps getting louder. Look, if I didn't explain this to you guys subconsciously would have all picked it up. Don't get me wrong, you would have picked it up. But if you explain to you guys are now thinking, oh my God, yeah, that all makes sense. The hissing is all over the place because it's a hiss, but the chanting is structured and it's constant and it's getting louder. And that's the pickups that you get. And again, as a letterer, I don't need to say any of this. But as a reader, you pick all this stuff up without even me telling you about it. Other stuff would be when you're reading, again, I'm talking American or Western comics rather than manga, because with manga, you reverse everything.
Right.
Everything is flipped.
Right to left instead of left.
Right to left.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy is falling down. He's drowning, basically. And as he's drowning, he's kind of remembering his life is flashing before his eyes, metaphorically. Look at the placement of the balloons. It goes left to right. And it kind of sinks. And you notice it kind of sinks down. So again, subconsciously, you're picking up this guy is falling and he's drowning, even if you don't read the words. You're kind of picturing that his thoughts are, oh, I'm getting dizzy, getting deeper, weight of water crushing down on me. You get all that just from the bubble placement.
Right on.
And again,
That's really cool.
If I didn't explain to you guys would subconsciously already all pick all this stuff up. Your eyes will naturally move left to right. And you can kind of see it converging in, because the main focus is now the guy at the bottom. He's remembering himself as a young man, but you notice that in reality, he's an old man, and he's just basically sinking to the bottom of the ocean. It's all these little things that if you have a letterer who actually reads the script, looks at the page and understands what they're doing, they will put all the stuff in there for the reader to really grasp. And of course, a bit of special effects, your click, clack, rat-a-tat. And you notice it, again, goes forward a bit. And as it gets louder, it builds all that excitement up. Notice with the blood splatter as well. It goes, because the blood is a bit redder, and as the BAM kind of shifts away, I don't know if you can see on the screen, but as it shifts away, it gets a bit lighter as well. Again, these are all things that I think about, because guess what? As the blood splatter moves across, the point of impact is a deeper red, but the point of, as the BAM moves away, becomes a lighter color, and it almost fades away. And again, it's stuff like that, which as a letterer, that's why I show these as the sample pages, because I try to explain through it. It's whether you pick it up. And again, these don't change size because it's all from the same object. So you can imagine, it doesn't get louder or softer. It's just that same little alarm clock going crazy, the burr. But because it's all going crazy, it's all the same thing, it kind of emanates all around the alarm clock. So again, if you did it burr, and it goes across, what it means is the sound gets softer as it goes across. But that's not what the intent of this one is. The intent of this one is the second panel is just meant to be this explosion. So it's quiet, explosion of sound, quiet again. And that's why it's all the same size. And again, it's that little things that if you get a good letterer, that's what you should be looking out for.
Yep.
Okay. Again,
has lettering always been your well, you're very passionate about it, and mate, I'm telling you, I'm enjoying what you're speaking about. So, by no means stop. This is great for anyone learning or anyone that's been doing it. And, this is lovely stuff. I talk to Shane about, great things like that. And what people like yourself, guests and that, can do for this show, and people that are watching it that might trigger ideas. But the passion I'm going to ask you about, you obviously produce your own comics and stuff. So you're a writer as well, mate? Yeah.
I do.
Yep. What the lettering side of things mean? What gets that little thing in you, that itch you can't scratch?
And so you find, as the writer, though, that's what I love about it, because when you write a novel or prose or whatever, it's so rigid. You write that dialogue, it is stuck there on the page as a writer, and you can't move it. And to be really fair, I've been mucking around with lettering for many, many, many years. But how do you say it? I always felt uncomfortable. I have a bit of imposter syndrome, and I suppose a lot of people do, where I always feel no matter what I do in lettering, I always feel I'm not good enough. And I've always felt that for the longest time. And because of that, I've always said, look, I think I can do it, but I'm going to trust somebody else, and I'll pay somebody else to do it. It was actually last year when I decided, you know what? Screw it. I'll take the plunge myself, and I'll do, I'll let out everything by myself. And that's when I took that initial plunge to go, you know what? I think I'm good enough. I've practiced for years. You can tell I do a lot of reading. I've read up on all the theory behind a lot of how things work. I'm going to take the stab at it. And once
mate, you haven't just taken a stab to it, mate. You've taken a big double-headed axe to it, mate, and then taken it to the butcher. I'm telling you, mate. Look, this is great stuff, man. You're very, very, very talented.
Because I have to say, once you get into it, man, for me anyway, I love fonts, and I've joked with a lot of people. I'm actually dying for somebody to write a really good sword and fantasy story with a lot of magic in it, because I've got this font called Dark Arts, which is a really cool sigil font, and I haven't had I had the chance to use it just once, and damn it, I want somebody to do some more magic because I want a letter with that particular font, and I've got like fonts I've stored away that I'm just going, come on, somebody do something on a typewriter because I need to use that typewriter font. And so
they're screaming at you. They're like, help me, get me on that page.
Let me get on the page. Again, like you can kind of see here, and I'll just finish up. You got the boom, and you can kind of see here, again, with different fonts, like this particular lady, she's a cyborg. So you can kind of see here, rem erratic. You can kind of see how the lettering works through here, that it's like the voice in her head. And that's where color is also important. And that's why I always say black and white is so unforgiving, because with color, you can do tricks that you get away with. With black and white, it's very unforgiving because you got to try to let the reader know that that's a bubble in a head and not anywhere else. Right. Other stuff that's always interesting is there are times where you can go lettering and the laughter is behind. And, just simple trick. You could put he in the main bubble, or you could slide it behind. And sometimes it's actually a nicer slip behind because he's laughing, but it doesn't pull you out of the page so much from the actual bubble itself.
Yep.
Again, blood splatter, schlick, stuff like that, very, very bloodthirsty fonts. And I get the chance to use it. I'll skip ahead because I think you guys have seen a lot of this. This is my absolute fun page to show people, because I get to play a lot with different special effects. And I also get to play with different fonts. And you can see that what the difference as fonts makes in different special effects. That splash uses almost like a bubble writing type font. So when it falls in, it's splash. And you can kind of see the difference between that. That crunch is a lot sharper. You see how hard the Ks are. So again, picking the right font for the right special effects is really important, because it goes very different again, and that's very different as well. Again, picking up the right font for the right special effects, it's absolutely crucial. And so I've got, like I said, I've got a whole stack of fonts which I'm dying to use, just waiting for the right special effect to come up or the right occasion. I've got my boom font settled. I've got my my gun font thing. But to be fair, this is actually the first time I use splash, because funny enough, not many people are falling into water in the comics I get to letter. This is actually the first time. And I don't know whether that's a trend in writing where everybody's deciding no more falling in water, but bring it back. Have people fall in water more often.
Bring it back.
As you talk about the different types of font and you talk about the different things, one thing I find interesting going through working with you in my own titles, I've yet, I don't know that we've done it yet, but very shortly we'll be doing a lot of rain. Do you do like a rain font, like a pitter patter or a splatter type of?
It is one that I tend to use for that one. It's with the rain font, it tends to be just elongated. So again, unfortunately I don't have a sample of that one, but with rain font, it has to be elongated and it has to be on the ground level where the droplets hit the water.
Right. You know, hey,
And it's,
look, you're sold on me, bro. I'm just it's interesting because you talk about the different types of font and where they go, and like the splat that's right there. You know what I mean? There are all these really cool nuances to lettering that I don't think people realize until they're given the opportunity to see an individual that does it. You know, like you're opening up this book, this world. Oh man, it's so easy to go down this rabbit hole, because if you look at things as a reader, right? If you come into comic books as a reader, you're like, oh well, you've got your writer and you've got your interior artist. That's the extent of most people's undertaking into the world of comic books. But you know, as you go forward, certain things are being, I'm not going to say they're phasing out. That's an awful way to look at it. But certain things are being done differently now because the technology that we have. Like a lot of guys that do line work do their own inks. You know, they go back and they ink their own stuff because of technology that's made it that much easier. You know, and then you've got your colorists. Some guys do all three in their books. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, then you bring in your letterer and your editor and all these different nuances to comic books, but they're so much bigger than people actually see. You know, how much time it takes for you to go in and put in your letters where you put them, because it's almost like you're reiterating the story when you put the letters on the page. You know,
I'm really, really happy for you to hear you say that. So just on the coloring point, and I'll cover this one first. You can see with the splat, you can kind of see where the sound comes from. The sound actually comes from the back of his head where it explodes out. So you know that whole splat sound effect. Yeah. But the whole point about it is it's gory, it's messed up, it's bright red and stuff like that. You don't want to cover that. You absolutely don't want to cover that. So sometimes it's nice to have that see-through font where it makes sense, where you don't cover that gore and that impact, that almost visceral quality of it. But speaking about colorist, and man, I can spend another hour with you guys on color theory. But with colors, it's changed so much, because previously a color in terms of, and you guys know this, it's back how the printing presses used to work. And you're going back, say, the old Spider-Man comics, the old X-Men comics, whatever. A lot of it was simple printing presses, which means the colors could only be flat. So you got one yellow, one blue, one green. That's it. In that, a lot of respect is the colorist was really an afterthought, because there was you don't have a choice. You had one red, one this, one that. You can have shades of it, with a bit of white in there, but on the whole, everything was one block color. That's totally changed now. And not only has the coloring improved out of sight, the way people print has improved out of sight. And with the rise of digital comics, man, you're not beholden to the printer. The printer could say, oh no, I can only do CMYK and only these combinations. You go, you know what? Doesn't matter. My digital colors will show you the entire gamut.
Absolutely.
And so with colors, man, I would say, especially in this day and age, the coloring is almost on par with the pencils at this point in terms of the effort and work that's involved. When I look, for me, because, and especially with most creators, when I read a comic now, I read for the story, I read for everything. But man, I spend a long time reading a comic now because I appreciate all the hard work that goes through it. Because I'm going, man, that lighting effect would have taken that guy 20 minutes to do. Yeah. Man, I really like that balloon placement because I can see that he's trying to get these two guys to be argumentative. Oh man, I really like how they put the cliffhanger on that panel. That writer did a great job here because I want to turn the page. Right. And I suppose it's made, I'll stop the screen now since we finished. It's made reading a comic for me just that little bit more engaging because I get all the subtle cues behind it, and I love it. And it's something as a regular reader you may not notice, and it's not up to a regular reader to notice. It's nothing to do with them. they just want a good story, and they want your eyes on the page and from beginning to end. But as a creator, man, if you read, and I did read Rick McClune as well. I loved it. I absolutely loved it because you can pick out all the Hayden's writing. You can pick up Ben's art. You can pick up all these bits and pieces where I'm reading it and I'm appreciating the hard work that goes into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like if you're a chef. If you're not a chef, you enjoy your food. If you're a chef, you go, oh, I picked up this level of tarragon, or that paprika enhances this.
Right.
Or if you're a wine connoisseur, you can appreciate with different foods. Look, I'm not that level in terms of my food eating. I just eat and whatever's there. But it's the same with comics. As soon as you create, you got that glass broken, because once you see certain things and you can appreciate certain things, you never look back.
Absolutely.
You never ever look back. Yeah.
I'll be looking at lettering totally different from now on.
Right.
Oh, mate, if for anyone out there that's just learned all of this through USK, I mean, like, mate, you just, well, you know, the next evolution, hopefully, of everyone's next issue, you know, like, will be better for listening to that, because I know that I've taken bits and pieces of what you've said, and I can definitely make a better effort with Battle for Bustle. And, you know, you've obviously influenced Dustin, because he's, you know, you've both spoken about it, and Shane's mentioned it to you. So that's great, mate. Like, that's brilliant info. And
yeah, that was awesome.
It's been excellent, man. Like, I've really enjoyed that.
It's super educational to have him around. I mean, I'm not trying to be. SK is very. He's been in so many projects that he can confidently give knowledge about different aspects of the industry. Like when I started doing, you know, when we put out our first issue of The Listener, it was like, yeah, this is awesome. Had a good time. The story went well. People jived with it. But all of a sudden, when it was like, bring on a letterer that's a letterer, like a professional letterer, it elevates your project. You know what I'm saying? To a degree. And that's not to demean anyone or talk about anybody's projects. But I'll say this. There are certain things that you need to have in a comic in this day and age to be competitive, you know, to be able to be competitive. And I know we all like to see each other succeed, but at the end of the day, we're still trying to push ourselves, you know, and push our product. And if you're, you know, you mentioned food, right? If you go to the table with these connoisseurs, right, and you bring like a plate of shit, and you hand them a plate of shit, these connoisseurs aren't looking for the pieces of corn in it. They're literally going, this is a piece of shit. You know what I mean? You know, but when you bring in people that are, and like I said, that's not to demean anyone or tell you not to chase your dreams or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? I support everybody doing this, but there's a level of game, okay? Either you know, I have a friend right now that's beating themselves up constantly because they don't feel like their game is there. Trust me, I walked that path too. You know, I was like, oh, my book's not good enough. This is that, because we all feel like that. I don't give a shit what anybody says. There are times we all feel like that. But when you bring in a team and you know, there has to be an expectation. You can't come into it with eyes wide shut, right? The Listener was a $6,000 book before I even brought an editor on, or before I even brought on a professional letterer or anything like that. So you have to come into it with some kind of expectation that this is going. Now, to be fair, it is 24 pages, all my books, and they are all full color with at least 7 covers. You know what I mean? So there's costs in there. But that being said, you can't come into it ignorant of the fact that a good letterer is going to cost you. You know what I'm saying? A good editor is going to cost you. Any of these guys, they come in because they're good at what they do. They know they're good at what they do. You know, you can't walk in and be like, hey, look, can I get Art Adams to do some work for me? I know that he charges X amount of dollars, but I was hoping he'd do it for like $50 a page. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, have some kind of realistic idea of what you're doing. And I think that when we come into this brand new, we're wearing these like rose-colored glasses, right? We start looking around and we're like, oh, this is pretty. This is awesome. These guys are doing this. I can do this. But have an expectation. Have the expectation that you need the letterer and everybody else involved.
Yeah, I think the other step would be is, and I 100% agree with you. If anybody wants to get into lettering, I would always say, hey, absolutely go for it. But do like everything in life, practice and it will get better. Same with writing. Like honestly, I would say to you, your first draft of any story is going to be bad. Let's just not pretend. Your first draft is always going to be bad.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean, my wife edited
Yeah.
everything.
Of course. So if you know your first draft is going to be bad, don't beat yourself up that it's bad, the dialogue is stilted or doesn't link properly or there's a huge plot hole, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's always that next step forward. Okay, it's not good or not where I want it to be. Doesn't matter. Next step forward. It's now better, better, better. And at a certain point, you might decide, you know what? I'm going to abandon it. It's not going to go where I need to be, which is also fine. But it's also the thing to develop and just know that just take that next step forward. Same with lettering. Look, to be really fair, my first few jobs, which again, you practice this, were horrible. Absolutely horrible. I couldn't get the balloon the way I liked it. It looked messy. It was, it took a lot to get to where I needed it to be. And it's not a bad thing. It's, you know what I mean? If you don't start off bad, you'll never be kind of good, kind of bad to be okay, and then you work your way up. And then the more you take the next step forward. So that's why it's like, look, and the other thing is, I'm pretty easy to reach on Facebook and all the rest of it. If anybody actually wants any ideas on it, and just reach out to me. I'm happy to answer most questions.
I was actually going to ask you that, SK. Surely, with your knowledge, and there's young people, older people trying to get into comic books and stuff, you're obviously making yourself available for people to contact you. And if they've got a question, you're happy to give them a hand, mate. See, this is what we were talking about before. This is community, man. It's a beautiful thing,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And SK, the other thing I'd like to ask you, mate, you seem like such a fired up yet calm fellow. When you're having those moments when the bubble isn't quite fitting, do you have those little moments where the earphones are off across the room and you're circle? Like, have you ever had one of those moments, mate? Does it get that frustrating for you?
There's one, and again, not going to name the person, not going to name the project, because I'm absolutely. So what they did was they put in about 300 words into one tiny panel. And look, one of the rules of letter is, as best as you can, you don't change it's not your job. You're not the writer. You don't change the words. You try your best to put everything in. And I've always prided myself that I found a way. Whether you move the bubble from one panel to another panel, or you do some cheats. There's a lot of little tricks you can do to fit more words in the page. A couple of rules is you can't cover someone's face, you can't cover any main details, but there's a lot of cheats you can do to try to fit things in. I gave up. I just actually the one and only time I wrote back to him and said, and to this one particular person, and said, I'm sorry, I have to give up. You have to rewrite that. It's not going to fit. And that was my only, in terms of lettering, my absolute lowest point, because I couldn't fit all those words in a page. And if you want, I'll show you offline, because I never want to embarrass people or, in public. But I gave up. That's the one and only time when I was lettering where I can't do this.
I think that's
physically impossible to fit.
It's okay to have a situation where, like, it doesn't work, right? It's definitely okay to have those situations. Like, I'll be the first one to admit, like, the other day I had to reach out and go, hey, look, man, can we add a couple words, because I should have put them in there. I didn't put them in there. The way that I had written it, it needed these couple words added, and they made perfect sense to go in there. But you look at things when sometimes, like, as a writer, you look at things like you're so in it. Like, I use the term the forest for the trees a lot, because you're so in it that you don't see these things. The editor's not going to tell you it sucks if you didn't put something in it, because he doesn't, that's not his job. You know what I'm saying? He may be like, oh, well, I suggest you add this or I suggest you add that. But if you didn't put something in there that you were planning to, he doesn't know that. You know what I'm saying? So neither does the art team. No one knows something other than you. So like with my books, I don't have the 6 months or the 5 months or whatever some people do when they go do their projects. But at the same time, that's also an Achilles heel for me too, because I'm so in it that there's chances are I'm thinking about my other projects at the same time. So I don't miss I'll miss a subtle nuance, you know,
Yeah.
so be like, okay, I better go over here and check this out because one of the editors or the letterer says we're missing something that we need. And that's the coolest part about it. And I'll talk about that every time we talk about comic books is we have to have a team that you can rely on. It's not their job. It's not their job. Don't confuse it. You know what I mean? It's not their job to come in and save you. But if you pick the right people, they care about what they're doing. It's not just a job. It's their career. It's their livelihood. So they want to be like, they want you to succeed. And it's not just because they want a paycheck. Okay. They're going to get paid. You know, they already know this. And if you're working with me, you get paid ahead of time anyway. So it comes to the point where it's like, all right, if I keep the job doing really well, the book comes out, everybody loves it. Okay. I'll use this phrase too. When I eat, we all eat. And that's how it's done with any members of a team that give a shit, because they're like, oh, well, I know that I've got another project coming out in a month and a half from them, or even a month from them. You know, if it looks great, they're going to ask me to come again. Not only that, it's a steady stream of work, you know, so now everybody's cooperating together to make sure that the product comes out and the customer's happy. Because if the customer's happy, everybody's working. You know what I mean? Everybody's getting what they need to do. And not only that, it's like, I get it all the time. Who lettered your book? Who did this cover? You know, who did that panel? You know, and it's like, oh, well, this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. And all of a sudden, there's more work for this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. You know, and that's not to say that they're going to leave your project. No, don't mistake that either. It's a lot of times you get people and they realize that instead of selling the cow, they're at home selling the milk. You know what I mean? It's a project. Now you have a steady form of income from these individuals. And if you're good to people and you work with a polite team and a team that gives a shit about one another, they're probably on another team that gives a shit about one another and another team that gives a shit about one another. Now, instead of $200 or $300 a month, now it becomes $900 a month and $1,400 a month. And this is just a side gig for a lot of these cats. You know what I mean? Like a bunch of our guys work for heavy metal. You know what I mean? I'm not the big fish that they work with. They're just awesome people and they're on my team and, you know, they give a shit about the product. You know, the same thing goes for ES. The guy's got more projects than he knows what to do with, I'm sure. And it's an amazing thing. And he just told you guys earlier in this interview, he'd only been doing it professionally for a little while. You know what I mean? So this comes to this point where if you push yourself and you strive to it, that's just like I was talking about getting into the comic book industry earlier. If you push yourself and you work for it, doesn't matter how much it sucks for a little bit. Doesn't matter how scary it is or how difficult it can be. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. And the best thing I can say about it is that people are grateful, whether you realize they are or not. You take them away from the living realm that they're in right now. And I had, I use myself because it's easy. I had, when we did the listener the first time, I was horrified. I'd never run a Kickstarter. I'd never done anything like that before. And I went a week without a sale, like a whole week without a single sale at all. And my goal was higher than any of the ones I do now. You know, my goal was like $2,400. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm still the new guy. I'm still a new guy. I don't give a shit. I'm still a new guy. But at the same time, it's quality of work. You know, eventually people start seeing it more and more and more, the quality of work. And ES put me on that. I had a bad day one day and he put me on that. The quality of work's there. Just keep at it. You know what I mean? But I had a fan reach out to me. I'm my own worst critic, and anybody that knows me will tell you that's the truth. But I had a fan reach out, and he was like, Dustin, I really, really like the idea of the listener. Like, I really, really like it. And I was like, well, you haven't read it yet. And he was like, yeah, but the Kickstarter says a lot. You know, we get everything we need from it. The imagery is beautiful, da-da-da-da. And I got out of bed thinking, man, this is going to be okay. This is going to be all right. That was in November of last year. Okay. Fast forward to now, I have 3 published books. I'm working on 2 more with 3 IPs in less than a year. I'm not the highest animal on the food chain, but I'm damn sure not an amoeba. And that's something that you guys have to understand when you come into this. You have to find your own self-worth. And working with a team like ES and, Eric or anybody else on my team, you guys could pick out of the 20 people on my team, you could pick out 20 of them that will tell you the same thing. You just have to strive forward and push yourselves, and you'll get to where you want to be. Look at Shane right now. Shane is backing all these incredible artists. He's pushing all these incredible people to come out of their shell, and the shell is what stops you from getting where you need to be at.
Mate, I was, as I've been known to do, haven't I, Shane? Have a few beers while I'm down in the granny flat and do some drawing and, listen to David Bowie and varying other things. And Shane and I chat quite a bit. And I had this, like 10 beer epiphany, like as you do. And I said to Shane, man, you know what you're like? And he's like, what's that? I said, we're like all the books loose around Australia and stuff. And you're like the library, man. You're a fucking library. Shane was laughing. But, mate, that's essentially for a lot of creators look, Dustin, I'm with you, mate. I mean, I'm 43. I'm new. Fear held me back for a long time until, I've got to do this. And one of the first people that reached out was Shane, like, hey, how you going? And, it started off with joining the comic creators, list that you got, Shane, mate, so people can contact you. And then I think slowly over time, mate, things evolve and, you reach out to more people. And like today, Dustin, we've met through this. Shane and I have become mates just through communication and talking. I've met SK today, and SK has come out and, hopefully, given a few people, including myself, a bit of a kick up the bum about, hey, don't forget about, the lettering and what it can do for you, in terms of story and things. And the page turn, mate. Yes.
Yes,
and
yes.
The page turn
it's a beautiful thing, man. It's a lovely thing. And, I'm very happy to be part of all of this. I mean, my God, and I think you're right, Dustin. Australia does really have a bit of a hammering along vibe at the moment. You know what I mean? There's a lot of creators happening. There's people really, pushing their stuff out, getting motivated by their peers and stuff. And there's no competition that what I can understand. I think it's a healthy competitive nature in terms of you see someone else's product and you go, oh, I got to try and do better, or, I want to get that issue out quicker and stuff.
Yeah.
And then, and I think that's a nice wave, and that keeps things moving for people and stuff,
I think Australia is a new realm almost. And that's not demeaning anywhere else in the world. Okay. I've been all over the world, and I think that the Australian creative community is a fantastic place. It's a fantastic place. And I've met some of the coolest people just out of Australia. You know what I mean? I've met some of the coolest people in New Zealand. It's just living in the US, we have this expectation, right? It's almost like the world is so big, but being in the US, it's not. We think about it as like it's the land of opportunity, and I love my country. Please don't think that I don't. What I mean by that is the fact that it's so big. It's so big. You've got all these incredible artists and incredible writers and everybody else, and a lot of them are here. All the big publishers are here. So it's literally like you're fighting everybody and their mother to get seen here. I sell more books in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Germany than I do inside the continental US. And I think that's it's very interesting to me, and it's incredibly interesting because it's styles of art, which I've diversified in my books. I try to do a different style in each of my books now. But there's also a type of interest almost. You know what I'm saying? If you go to certain parts of the world, their World War II is a big collective type of thing. You know what I mean? You'll see uniforms and guns and vehicles and stuff that are collected by people that are not enthusiasts, but I don't really know what you'd call it, but they're collectors, eclectic tastes of stuff like that. So my books do really, really well with folks that collect stuff like that and are into stuff like that. We just the biggest sale I had to the listener actually just happened here in the continental U.S. My grandmother lives in a retirement community, and what she did was she went to, and we joke about it, she went to bingo, and as she's off to do, you know what I mean? In her 80s, she went to bingo, but she was waiting for copies of the listener, and I got them both. I was waiting to get 2 issues before I sent both, you know what I mean? So I sent her both issues. Now she's there where all these retirees are veterans, and family of veterans and stuff. Oh my gosh. And to be fair, I sold them all at cost. I don't give a shit what anybody says. You know what I mean? They all bought the books at cost. And so, but they all loved it. An entire room of people ordered these books. It was like when you're in school and you take that thing to your parents, the pamphlet. I don't know if you guys did it when you were in school, grade school or anything. But they would be like, hey, look, buy the product. You know what I mean? Whoever buys the most of it, you get like a prize, right? So it was like my grandmother took the book to bingo, and everybody in bingo wanted pieces of it, and it's because of the age group and the type of book that it is and what it's about. It doesn't matter how gory it is or what's going on. It's the fact that it is the concept of it, what it's about and what's kind of the art styles, you know what I'm saying? Most, I find that America is very big into certain art styles versus other parts of the world, and I'm learning that because I'm, paying attention to these concepts and formulas of sales and all this other jazz. But it's interesting, to the Australian market has these awesome, awesome artists, right? I'm a huge fan of Mike Crome. He's an incredible dude. Okay. Absolutely incredible dude. And, he broke into the American market and does very well over here. Did incredibly well over here. I'm really hoping that people that bought my book will go look at Darren's book, because we did a cross promotion. I'm really hoping that they go look at Darren's book because Killaroo's awesome. It has so much history within Australia. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's a big ass kangaroo, so I'm like, everybody's like, people joke about this on the Barbie nonsense and all kinds of other crap like that. But at the same time, there's so much history in the comic industry in Australia, that I think the rest of the world needs to see it. I mean, I know you guys are cool as anything, and I enjoy hanging out with you guys, and I enjoy working with Australians. The majority of my team is from other parts of the world, and so I'm learning more as I get into this industry, but you guys are not as exclusive anymore, is what I'm getting at. Because I just went and had a conversation with Battle for Bustle about Battle for Bustle with a large group of people. And I'm trying to situate something really cool for Battle for Bustle right now, and, there's just, people don't know it exists. And that's the thing with the listener. That's the thing with greed or anything like that I do. I just have to put it in people's hand. And that's the difference, and that's what SK was talking about. If you turn the page and you want to read it, man, look, Lee gave me the best compliments in the world, you know what I mean? Like, about my own books. So it was like, if this guy, who I am like head over heels with his book, is like, man, I loved it. I was talking Shane's ear off about it. That kind of thing means that I'm in the right direction. If SK goes, man, this is really interesting. I'm really glad to be lettering it. And you could do this, and to make it better, it gives me even more confidence that I'm doing it correctly. If you look at SK's Kickstarters, the guy's books are brutal. They're absolutely insanely awesome. His Kickstarters are beautiful when you see them. His color works when he does colored books are beautiful books.
Yes.
you guys don't come in with bullshit, is what I'm getting at. It's all really high quality stuff. Everybody on, I'm not going to say I was a fan of every piece of work I saw out of the calendar, but that's fair. I'm allowed to have an opinion. You know what I mean? I'm not a fan of everything. But the point is, they're all talented people. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be to my taste because art's subjective. You know what I mean? But
Absolutely.
It's all talented. You know, they're all talented folks that you've brought together for this 18-month calendar, if I'm not
18-month calendar it was, yeah.
Calendar. Beautiful stuff. But I think there are a couple people in there that break past their own barrier. Like Lee just mentioned, you break past that little barrier you have, and they're going to be all over the world. And I say that from somebody that's been in this industry for 15 years. You know?
I've got to stop at 12. Look, number one, thank you so
yeah.
much for having me on. I am sorry I was talking very, very quickly because I do not have only a short period of time. I had a lot I wanted to cover.
SK, you were awesome, mate. No need to apologize.
Yeah. So I was rushing, but I so much to cover, so little time. So thank you so much for having me on. I've got to run.
Thank you, SK.
Thank you, SK. See you, champion.
Yeah.
Such a cool guy. Like,
absolutely.
Cool guy. Like
that was amazing. That blew my mind.
Right.
Learning about the interest. What do you call? What's the word I'm trying to get here?
Intricacy.
Yeah, intricacy. I can't even say it. Of lettering. That was wow. That was just I just thought it was words on a page.
Yeah, look, when he hit me up the first time,
that's an amazing art form,
bro. It was so. When we started talking about lettering the very first time, it was just like he was like, "Hey, I could do this, and this," and I was like, "You do what now?" And he was like, "Yeah, it's gonna be great." And the minute he put the word, we didn't edit the listener when wins week one time after he came in, and then Greed. I mentioned earlier, I just had to add a couple things. It wasn't for lack of, the stuff didn't look good or anything. I just needed to add it for my own sanity. But there's something to be said about any of these guys that can come in, and a talented person, they come in and they lift the project. They come in and they elevate what you've already done. And that can be your editor, your, anybody in that vein, because we all talk about artists. And this is not a knock. I swear to God, it's not a knock. But it's like they're like the main guitarist or the lead singer of a band, right? Everybody sees those cats, but your writer is like your drummer, and you've got your letterer over here on the keyboard, right? You don't see those guys as much, but they're always there. They wrangle the band. They make sure the roadies are there. They make sure. The fans are in place. Everybody's where they need to be because you have a backbone. And
mate, I think it's 100% with you. I think it's a beautiful thing that he even put himself out there to say, like, publicly here, mate, if there's anyone out there, I'm approachable. If you need a hand with something, that's, like the subtlety in the lettering is something that probably does get overlooked by a lot of people. What he was saying is stuff that I've also seen and noticed, like in comic books and things, but there was a hell of a lot of stuff in there that even when I'm sitting at home doing this stuff, it just doesn't occur to you. I don't think you should ever stop learning, like we were talking about earlier. Even if you're at your 3rd issue or your 10th issue or whatever, and you pick up something from someone that is constructive and could be helpful, then implement it. And,
I'm glad on my team. I'm like, whatever, that guy's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this guy's been a great mentor to me as well through this journey as well. So he's always been open for giving advice and so forth. So he's just an amazing guy.
Man, there's like workflow, right? So workflow is a big deal in this industry. Like as we sit down and we, as husbands or fathers or whatever, what have you, we do have to decide a workflow about how we do our work, because
thank you, Darren.
You have to spend time with your family as well. You can't hobbit yourself away all the time. You know what I mean? The granny flat's only, you can only stay there for so long before they come looking for you,
Mate, they come looking sometimes. Don't you worry about it. But I hide behind the comic books, like I'm not here.
And that's such a it's that solitude that gives us way for our creation. You know what I mean? And but at the same time, when you create this workflow, I literally have 18 people in my stable right now. And when you work on so many projects, you have to create a workflow. Like it has to be the way it should be. Like when it comes to lettering, I don't have to worry about it. When it comes to my story, my editors are great. Whether it's Chuck Pinot or my wife, either or Phil, if Phil's working on it, you know what I mean? It looks great. I don't worry about those things because each of those people will tell me they suck before I know they suck. So it's easy to do those things. But he touched on something that was very, very important, like unbelievably important. Edit your stuff before it goes to them because it's not their job to fix it. Most of the time they will. Same thing with a good colorist. A good colorist will go in and fix lines. It's not his job, but his name's also on that product. So he wants it to look the best he can make it look, and you'll see them go in and only the people like that are in it will notice, you know what I'm saying? But guarantee if Lee messed up something in Battle for Bustle and he had a colorist go behind him that fixed the mess up, Lee would know it was fixed. Whether he's going to say anything or not, he's probably most of the time everybody's appreciative of the guy that stepped out of his own thing to help somebody out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's a lot to be said for that. Cover artists the same way. If you do a cover and the cover's has an issue with it, a lot of times you got a good colorist, they're going to fix it. It's going to look really good.
Mate, I can tell you sometimes the inker and I have some big, some harsh words to each other. I tell you, like that granny flat can get a bit heated some nights, mate, I wonder about myself sometimes,
That's something I think that, it's funny, you talk about wondering about yourself. I laid down the story for that new story or that new IP the other night, and I was really wondering about myself for a couple minutes. I was like, oh no, people are going to get into all that. But then I was like, but there's people that walk around in these outfits, and I'm not even going to talk about any of that nonsense. But
mate, Summer Battle for Bustle. I'm thankful the team has a look at it because there are a couple of things that I put into issue 2 that
I can't talk about.
I was told to probably need to tone that down a little bit because it might not transcend well to some readers because it got.
Oh,
mate, I did it because it made the story better because it's a little bit. It's sort of. I had a panel that was basically explaining that, like the little spoiler, but it's in the 3 issues that are out, so whatever. That the children ended up eating their parents, and it was a little bit more detailed than that, and it was quite graphic. And I'm very thankful that. Tam, much like yourself, Dustin, with your wife, came along and told me just to, nothing wrong with it, but just back it off a bit because I was pretty gung-ho, but let's chuck it out there and see, Yes, I'm glad.
I had, so I have an amazing team, and I had one of my team members was like, they were like, so the new IP is a very adult IP, and they were like, hey, you can't do that. And I was like, what do you mean? They were like, no, you just none of those shenanigans, because we have a term for a certain group of people in our book because, 2 different groups of people, and one of them is scale writer, and whether you get it or not is, will come to pass before long. But it's a negative term, a derogatory term for certain people that have certain, inclinations. Anyway, so my buddy was like, you can't, I swear to God, you can't put that on it. She was just like, they can't do that. And she was like, as long as we can't see it and it's insinuated, it's fine. But you can't put it in the main story of the book. And I was like, well, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know if I'm that brave yet, but I'm getting brave lately.
Sometimes you got to run the gauntlet, mate, don't you? You know, like just test the waters. You can always.
What was that movie?
You can always put an apology in the next issue.
That's right. If we can have Cool World the way we had Cool World in the 90s, if we can have Cool World and we can have Who Framed Roger Rabbit, you know, we can have, and I know we don't, it's a faux pas nowadays, but it's tattooed on my leg, so I don't give a shit. So if there's Lola Bunny, if we can talk about Lola Bunny, like old school Lola Bunny, I don't know nothing about this new one, but we can talk about the old one, I think I'll be okay. There's enough people in the world. There's enough people in the world that are just as messed up as I am that'll enjoy it. So, you know, but it's going to be a good time. I think that tonight we had a couple incredible guests. I had a couple folks that were supposed to come hang out. I guess they're not. But like
That's
I said,
okay.
my guys are very. My team works. If they're in the industry, like 100% in the industry. If you guys know anything about my products or anything about my teams, they're very sought after individuals. So they work all the time. Like they're constantly working. They're great folks, but they're constantly working, and good on them for having work like that. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
or it's the other half of my team that are great people as well, but have all kinds of other, you know, things that they've got going on. So it's hard to get people free, especially on a Friday night when they've been working all week and they're like, hey, look, I want to spend time with my family or do this or that. So I am going to reach out a little bit earlier henceforth and see if I can't get people a couple weeks in advance, if not a month in advance, 2 months in advance, whatever I have to do.
Yep.
But it's exciting, guys, to have people on like ES and Hayden on. You know, those are very exciting. I'd like to drop there. That's my mother's maiden name. I think that's very funny. Hayden is my mother's maiden name. So I thought that was quite interesting. But I am paying attention to what you guys have got going on. Like I said, it's a big deal. Australia is getting huge. I love it. I'm not a military veteran. No, Dave, if that's what you're asking. My Uncle Les was one of the first Native American Green Berets. I am the only person in my generation in my family that didn't serve. It's not because I didn't want to serve. It's because I got arrested for assault when I was 14 and put into a military academy. So I had a bad taste in my mouth for it. Not that I don't appreciate them. I appreciate them with all my heart. You know what I mean? It wasn't for me. You know, I went right into college when I got out. So I have the utmost respect for those guys, and that's where the listener came from. The listener actually came from my Uncle Les, who was, like I said, one of the first Native American Green Berets. And I realized that Green Berets weren't out in World War II, and that's where we base our book at. That's why there's no mention of that in the actual book itself, because I thought the time period would. So Vietnam is not as relatable to people as World War II is. If you talk about World War II, there's movies and all kinds of other shenanigans and historical documentaries that have been put out. Vietnam's a little bit different. You know, I'm not like I'm not up on like all kinds of stuff about it, but it just wasn't talked about as much, I guess. So and it was just as bad. God knows it was just as bad for everybody. But at the same time, more people think about World War II, and I wanted to give people a more relatable time period that they could talk about with our books.
Makes sense.
Yeah, definitely not a veteran. In the comic industry, I opened my own shop at 29. I'm 35 now. A brick and mortar shop. I've got an online store. I've been writing indie comics since the middle of last year. I don't know that makes me a veteran in anything other than the fact that I love comic books and they're a big part of my life. I did start at a young age. I lived on a farm as a kid, and we used to I'd get like $5 a month working on the farm for my grandpa, and he'd take us up to like the one gas station in town where we could get a book off a spinner rack. You know what I mean? And we could
Nice.
$5 to get like a slushie and a book. You know, so but yeah, not a vet. No. Like I said though, for any vets that are watching that are around or, you know, whatever, what have you, I appreciate you with all my heart, everything that you've done, you know, for everybody's countries. And I think that's something that that we, as a world, I talk about secular things a lot, like that we're not secular. And I think that needs to be understood. I mean, this show alone shows that we don't need to be secular. All these cats from all over the world fought to protect each other. You know what I mean? It didn't, if you were in the trenches, it didn't matter if you were from America or Australia. You know what I mean? It really didn't matter. You guys were there and you only had each other in those moments in time. So I think distance and all that shenanigans, it's a wash, especially in this day and age. I feel bad for things going in Australia right now. You know what I mean? I feel bad for things going on in America right now. We're just it is what it is. We're a lot, as much as I hate saying we're secular, we're very much alike in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Most of the time the government sucks no matter where you live. You know what I mean? So it's what it is. I keep up with things because of the fact I give a shit. I got buddies living in Israel and the stuff going on in Israel. I mean, it doesn't change, and it sucks. I think comic books are something that can take us away from that. And I wasn't trying to break my own stuff by giving you guys a comic book about those terrible things or scary things in life. But at the same time, it was like I didn't want anybody to forget my uncle, I guess. And I still don't. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
But yeah, nah, man, not me. Not that I'm a coward or anything. It just wasn't for me.
Mate, it's I like the fact that you said you're doing it for the memory of your uncle, mate. That's as I've said previously to you guys, that's why I started doing my own comic book too, mate. It's for memory. Dad that used to walk me down to the newsagents, every Saturday morning, mate. And we'd go through the racks and pick things, and then go home and chill out together in the morning and read comics. And when I was a little fella, man, I used to be young and little tacker, and he used to come in and we'd pick a comic book and he'd just sit there and we'd read them together, and he was really cool because he'd do different voices for the characters, and then it'd be like wham, bam, like that sort of stuff. So it's feel like you're sitting there and you had this I guess like 20 personalitied individuals sitting there reading, going through this strangely animated contained story. And then you'd be getting G'd up, and then it'd be like, all right, night. And then,
But that's incredible, right? Because that it stays with you your whole life. That bond is something that no one can take from you. You'll find in any issue of the Listener, outside of store exclusives, there's a picture of Les on the back of every single book I put out.
That's really cool.
And I think there's a really cool book image that my buddy Kyle helped me put together, and it was I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful. But I am thankful for you guys. I'm thankful for your friendship. I'm thankful for the viewers. And that's not to say that I want to go and hug everybody or anything like that. That's just to say that there's a lot of understanding in this industry that we do have to stick together. We do have to help one another. And as Lee mentioned, and I've mentioned before, it is competition, but it's not competition like sports teams. Like, you're not out to smash each other or anything like that. It's competition in the fact that you're bettering one another when you deal with each other. Like, I picked up Battle for Bustle, and I was so excited because it was something that I had not read before. And that's very few and far between. All right, especially in the comic industry. But you're like, but Dustin, there's a million different titles. Yeah. But there's not a million different concepts. You know what I'm saying? And that's very important that you understand that when you come to an indie writer. I hope for your experience that it's in the original form of art. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to slip into those superhero tropes, and very easy to slip into the zombie trope or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's very, very simple. And it's hard for us as writers sometimes to avoid those tropes, So if you get these guys that are and girls that are literally, and what have yous, that are actually putting out content, you know what I mean, that's original, respect that, back them, show them your support, because they're stuck in a world of big fish, man. They're real big fish in this world, And Lee and I already, I'm in my mid-30s. You know what I mean? These guys aren't too much older than me, and they're just now getting started in this realm heavily as well. So support your people. You know what I mean? Support your indie artists. Go down to their house, buy your books from their house. But if you're going to their house, at least take them a beer. You know, take them some coffee when you go down there. You know,
absolutely. Don't think you're coming in with anything less than a 6-pack. I tell you.
You know, it's fun though, man. It's fun. It's fun to support each other. It's fun to see what we do together. You know, and
absolutely, mate.
I wouldn't be where I am now with the opportunities I have now if other artists hadn't supported me or lifted me up as a person, you know.
Exactly. It's all about community.
Absolutely.
Community, big time.
Calendar, people. Get that calendar. Learn about your people, man. Learn who's putting out books and stuff. Jesus. I would have never known about Battle for Bustle if it wasn't for that calendar. And you know what? I'm not ashamed to admit I'm happy that I learned about Battle for Bustle. But
I'm very happy that I learned about the listener, mate.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I'm trying to figure out ways to get more copies of that over to you guys in Australia. So there's also, like I've mentioned it before, Killaroo is phenomenal, guys. And Darren has his young book coming out, the young version of Killaroo.
Yeah, that's looking really cool.
Yeah.
Mate, Killaroo is pretty much an Australian staple, mate, from my memories, maybe the late 90s, early 2000s. So, I mean, Darren's been pumping along. So, I think I'm not sure people can, please don't quote me, or they can, pipe up if they want. But I think there may have been a little bit of a lull in the early 2000s in Australian comics and stuff like that. And the one thing that I can definitely tell you from my knowledge at the time was that Killaroo was still going and getting out there and digging his heels in. And for that, Darren, well done, mate. That's an excellent effort, and you're still going, buddy. You should be very proud.
Absolutely. Look at these little things, right? Look at those little nuances of things like that. You have this amazingly talented group of people. It's hidden away, and you're not going to be hidden for much longer. And, people can say, well, Australia's been out forever. Australia's whatever. That's not what I mean. I just mean the fact that there's a lot of talented folks that are starting to get noticed. You know what I mean? And it's awesome. It's phenomenal to see and to be on the cusp of this and to watch it occur. Like I saw Killaroo and I told Darren, I immediately went to Tank Girl. You know what I mean? That's where I went with it. I was like, that looks so much like Tank Girl. The art style, the characters. And, at the same time, I was assured there are no kangaroos like railing crazy chicks in Killaroo. So, you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, to each their own. But I think that the kangaroo is such a staple of Australia that it was a brilliant marketing, campaign, to use the animal that everybody thinks about, in Australia. I never wanted to surf there with y'all because the sharks over there. But at the same time, that's the animal I think of when I think of Australia, and the king brown. That's about the only things I think about when I think about Australia. So, but there's a lot to be said about the talent coming out of the country. There's a lot to be said about the talent that's trying to get to the country, and you guys are like that last bastion of country, like New Zealand, last bastion of talent that has yet to get tapped out just yet. You know what I mean? Because the UK comic scene is huge. It's huge. You know what I mean? And it's just getting bigger by the day. Whereas America, the funny thing about America is there's only so many large publishers. So everybody's literally tooth and nail to get where they need to be at. And now publishers are not getting printed here. They're not getting printed there. It's like, as an owner, where do you order from now? You have to change your orders. Now you've got new companies coming in and they're shaking things up like, hey, we're giving free freight shipping. Excuse me? Free freight shipping? Oh, maybe we should talk. You laugh, but when you think about it, I was paying $400 a week in shipping. You know what I'm saying? So when you come in and you're like, whoa, free freight. Well, hey, look, we might need to have a conversation. Now, the funny thing is, Diamond's been running publications for all these comics for so many years. Now, all of a sudden, dudes are starting to pipe up and go, hey, look, we can print cheaper. We can print cheaper. So it's an interesting time period in comic books all over the world, you know. And I'm thankful to be able to be on like I said, the cusp of it and watch it, you know, watch what's happening and see it. My daughter's writing and drawing her own stuff now, and it's interesting to see her. Where will she be in 10 years? You know, what's she going to be working on and stuff? And it's we just published. The books are coming to me now. We just published a young guy in the UK who didn't think that he could ever be published and was beating himself up. And his dad reached out and is a friend of mine and friend of multiple friends of mine. And I was like, yeah, cool. I'll put the kid's art in the book. You know what I mean? I don't need anything for it, but I'm going to put it in there because you know what? Everybody needs a little push. So
absolutely.
You know, but anyway, guys, it is late for me. I appreciate your time. Thank you for hanging out with me.
No worries, Dustin. Lovely to talk to you, mate. And one thing before we all go, shout out to the man who did this variant cover for issue 1 of Battle for Bustle, Beau Jardine. I believe he had a birthday recently, and
yes, I think it was yesterday.
I saw that, and just want to say hello and thank you for doing the cover and the artwork, mate. And you're another champion, so stick with it.
That's a reprint of number 1. We might need to talk.
You know where to reach me.
Because I'm every day I'm bustling. So, anyway, you guys have a great night, and it's always a pleasure. And for all of you watching, thank you for hanging out with us. We'll see you next Friday.
Thank you. See you later, guys.
Friday/Saturday. See you, everyone.
Take it easy.
Stay safe.
See ya. See you, Lee.
See you, buddy.